it's time for a different kind of video now. I'm not going to look at gameplay specifically. This is more of an information video really more than anything else, and it's predominantly off the back of either comments that have been made to some of the recent videos that I've done, or to do with people that have been messaging me direct. And it's about how I've managed to do what I've done with the cabinets that I've got, and how I've connected retro consoles to them, etc, etc. I suppose the purpose of this video really is just to go through at a fairly high level. I don't want to go down into too much detail, but of course if you guys want to ask me questions, then by all means do so, either directly via messaging or as regards to comments on the video. As regards to actually what all this means and what you have to do and how it looks and the sort of differences really between the different connection types that you can do. To show you what a lot of people would accept as being fine as a video image, and also what you can actually do to get that real genuine retro look, or should I say the actual way that they should be displayed natively really. I have tried to do a video already for this, but I got that much bogged down to the detail, it was just getting crazy, and it's difficult to know actually what to say and what not to say and what level of detail to go into. So I suspect what I'll do is I'll give a brief overview really of what's what at a very high level, and if there's any specific areas that you guys want me to go into, I'll be more than willing to give a more in-depth video on that specific part or parts. That isn't a problem at all. I suppose if I look at the things between retro versus HD, for the purpose of this video I'm going to be referring as being retro something like a Super Nintendo, a Neo Geo, Sega Saturn, a Nintendo 64, Dreamcast as well. They're all sort of retro to me in many respects. The Dreamcast not so much because of some of the connection outputs that you can get from that, but I don't want to confuse the issue really. So I suppose if I just concentrate initially on something like a Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo looks absolutely great if you connect it up to a normal TV, normal CRT TV, which would be the big bulky things. They've got a massive TV tube on them, but the actual picture in theory should be really sharp. Now this is assuming that your Super Nintendo is outputting via a SCART lead, for instance, and it's an RGB SCART lead, so it's been modified to actually provide that output, and also the TV that you've been using on or have used it on is SCART enabled, and it is RGB SCART enabled TV. I'm not going to bother going through things like composite video or super video because they are lesser qualities, and this is really about showing what your console can output and the best way to output it and to actually go about doing that. So if we look at the Super Nintendo to begin with, as I said, if you connect that up via the highest quality output at SCART RGB in theory, if you connect that up to a SCART RGB enabled CRT TV, it will give you the best picture you can get. The good thing about CRT tubes, specifically TVs or that type of technology, is that they're very adaptive to what kind of resolution that they can run. So they'll run from quite a wide range. Most of them will run from quite a wide range of different resolutions, which is great for retro gaming. Not so good for any HD stuff or anything like that, but that's the way it is. So it's always been accepted that if you want to get that retro look or the authentic look, you've got to use a CRT TV. Now obviously they're massive, but that's just the way it is. Now the cabinets that I've got, two of them being Sega Naomi cabinets, have got proper arcade monitors in them. Now they're CRT tubes, and they're much in the same way as a TV really in reality. but you can get various versions of these arcade monitors. Some will accept real low resolutions, and some will accept the higher resolutions, and some will accept all of them. Now obviously if you get an arcade cabinet, the best one to get is one that's got something called a tri-sync monitor, which will cover all the various resolutions that basically you're going to need for arcade boards or for any retro type consoles that I've mentioned. And you can also connect up a PC as well, running in VGA mode, which is 640 by 480. But again, I don't want to go too much into that, because that's something you have to think of someone else before you can do that. You can't just natively just connect one up and it'll just work. Not normally anyway. So getting back to the Super Nintendo, something that is fairly obvious on the retro consoles, and anybody that's seen them on a CRT tube will realise that they have something called Scanlines on them. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about actually what Scanlines are, but actually Scanlines are a hardware fault in effect. It's if you plug them into a CRT that will take that signal natively, you get Scanlines by the matter of fact as regards to whatever resolution that you're outputting. Scanlines will come with that resolution, depending on the resolution. Basically, what I'm trying to say to you is that Scanlines on retro consoles aren't something that was actually designed. It wasn't actually designed to give Scanlines. It just gives Scanlines because that's the technology that they were using at the time. And strangely enough, as time's gone on, is that people, sort of like myself really, that are really into the retro stuff, is that they think, and I wouldn't actually say they think, because it's absolutely true in my opinion, but the images look so much better with these Scanlines on, using old technology, than what they do if you plug a Super Nintendo into an LCD screen. They just look crap on an LCD, because the LCD screens can't reproduce the low resolution correctly. So the screen itself's got something called a scaler in it, which it will actually manipulate and process the image to enable it to display on the technology, on the newer technology. But it knackers the image up, so you lose the Scanlines, you lose clarity, and it just looks crap. So getting back to the CRT stuff. So at the moment, the best way to do that, to get the true authentic, absolute authentic look, is to use a CRT tube. Now you can get other things, other bolt-on gadgets that are scalers, so they'll upscale the image to be displayed on something like an LCD screen or a plasma, so it doesn't look as crap, so it doesn't look as fuzzy, perhaps it looks a bit sharper. And there's also machines out there that you can add that, sorry, not machines, devices that you can add that will add in false Scanlines, so you actually get a more authentic look. Now some of the ones that I've seen, they can really give really good images, but I'm not going to go into that part yet. That'll be something for another video, because there is some new equipment that's coming out fairly soon, hopefully. I'm going to buy some of that, and I'll be able to show you actually how it works and how good it should look. So that'll be for another video. So for the people that've got LCDs and that's all they have got, that's all they have got and all they are going to get, then that information will be beneficial to those types of people. But that will come in another video. Right, so coming back to what I'm actually going to show you here, is that I'm going to go through the various options as regards to looking at a Super Nintendo, for instance, on an LCD screen. So plugging it directly to an LCD screen using an RGB connection. I'm then going to move on to showing what that looks like on a CRT screen, and I may put a scaler in there as well, and also on the LCD screen, to see whether or not an additional scaler makes it any cleaner. And then I'm going to show you what it looks like actually natively connected to a proper CRT screen that will give you the appropriate Scanlines, and it will give you the appropriate low res image, so it will be as you would expect it to be if you're into your retro stuff. Once I've shown you some examples of the differences between those sort of signal inputs, I'll then go through and show you what I've actually used, or what I do use as regards to my connection methods on my arcade cabinet, and I'll explain a bit about the arcade cabinet, what type of monitor it's got in there, so you can get a bit of appreciation for that as well, and how that interprets the screen that to the image that you actually see as well, because there are various different standards of arcade monitors, and again that's another story again, but so I'll try and keep that short and sweet but meaningful. So the first video that I'll do, or sorry, the first demo of a video output I'll do, is I'll connect the Super Nintendo straight up to an LCD screen. This will be based on an RGB connection, so I've got a SCART RGB capable LCD screen, but it's a high def LCD screen, so for majority of people, okay, perhaps not a majority of people, but a lot of people, this is the way they'll connect up their retro console. This will be the way that they will connect up their retro console. People that haven't got CRT tubes. So you can see the various levels of quality, and I'll hopefully it will come out well on the video, but we'll see how it goes. Right, so this is Super Nintendo rigged up to a normal LCD screen via RGB SCART. So this is using the screen's inbuilt scaler. If we look at the screen there, it's fairly sharp, to be fair. So it's not a bad scaler on the screen, but you've got no Scanlines on there, so it does look it looks quite blocky. But to be fair, as a straightforward output from a Super Nintendo, it's not actually that bad. So again, if we just zoom in, it looks okay, but it's not great. Right, now this is actually on my Naomi arcade cabinet, but I've actually got it running in high res mode, the monitor connection at the moment. So it's 640 by 480. So to get this to actually display on the monitor at that resolution, I have to use a scaler box, which takes the output from the Super Nintendo, the RGB output, and then converts it through to VGA so it would display correctly on this monitor. Now, if you bought a Naomi that wasn't tri-sync, so was high res, because that's what they are predominantly, Japanese ones or converted ones are being made tri-sync, so they do low res, but if it's a high res monitor, normal 640 by 480, this is the sort of image that you'll get. Now, I'm not sure that you would see any difference on that on the video between this one and the previous one I've shown you on the LCD. They are quite similar, but the CRT one does look better. You probably can't tell on the video, but it certainly does look better. It's not quite as harsh. That's probably the real thing about it, really. It's not quite as harsh. The colours aren't quite so vivid, artificially vivid. I mean, to be fair, it actually looks alright on the monitor as it is, going into high res mode. But obviously this monitor in this arcade cabinet is called a tri-sync monitor, so it will actually go down to the full low res, and again I'll do the same kind of video with it being converted, with the signal being converted down to true low res, and for the monitor to actually display that image the best way it can. So if we zoom in there, and obviously we've got no real scan lines. There's some slight vertical scan lines on it, but it's only because it's a CRT, and I think that in itself makes the image a bit better to look at. Right, so what we're going to try here is the Naomi cabinet again, connected up to the Super Nintendo using a different converter box, which enables me to get a VGA or basically convert a SCART socket to a VGA socket and still keep the low res signal to put into the monitor, because again this monitor will make benefit of a low res signal. So let's look at that, and it is vastly superior. You probably won't tell from this distance, but again, as I've seen on some other videos, you've got these Scanlines, and we'll look at that. I mean, that is absolutely beautiful, and it's amazing what difference it makes. I mean, that is absolutely pin sharp. We look at the characters, some lettering. Again, I mean, that's a massive difference, and you should be able to even see that on this video, to be fair. Now obviously the more you come out, the less you see that, but with the naked eye you can actually see it even from this sort of distance. But obviously on the camera it's not picking it up. If we come in, and you'll see it. So that's connecting the same peripheral, in this case being the Super Nintendo, up to sort of two monitors. Okay, I've shown you on the LCD using the inbuilt scaler on the LCD, and that's just absolute bliss. And it's absolutely pin sharp. I then moved to my arcade cabinet. Now of course I can't just plug a Super Nintendo into an arcade cabinet. I've got to convert at least the plug and the signal to a degree, and that's what I did on the second demo. So I showed you it connected up to the Naomi cabinet, so CRT tube, but in 31K sync mode, which is 640 by 480, which is normal VGA screen resolution. So it's basically took the output from the Super Nintendo, it's upscaled it to the higher resolution and dumped it out to the screen. And then finally I've showed you the Super Nintendo connected up to the same arcade cabinet, but making use of the low res functionality of the screen, and also ensuring that I can get the low res signal out of the Super Nintendo using another converter into the monitor. And the actual difference is absolutely phenomenal. And I can basically do this for all of the retro consoles I've got. So you can see that there is that, you know, there's a massive marked difference there. And that's what it's all about in my view as regards to retro gaming. It's trying to emulate, well not emulate, but actually replicate the original video source that you would get. Now obviously I'm in a position here where I've got a monitor, or an arcade monitor, that will support all that, and it will all work in an arcade cabinet, which is a bonus. But we'll just stop that there for the moment. Now I hope that's given you a bit of an insight really to the various connection methods that you could have and various types of screen that you could have. Now obviously if you're connecting a Super Nintendo for instance direct up to a normal TV screen, you know, a CRT tube, an old style TV, and you're going from an RGB output, SCART RGB of a Super Nintendo into a SCART RGB TV, you'll get exactly the same quality as the third video that I showed you, because that's basically what my arcade cabinet is able to support, that native Super Nintendo resolution. So anybody using a normal TV, that's the quality that they'll see. But I think it's interesting to see the various levels of quality depending on what type of connection method you use as regards to signal type, you know, whether it's on an LCD screen etc, or whether you move over to a CRT, or whether it's an arcade cabinet CRT, and actually how you can connect it up between a different type of arcade monitor, because like I said, natively, or should I say most of the Naomi cabinets were actually high resolution, because the actual arcade gaming platform, which is based on the Dreamcast, which is a VGA compatible console, the games natively display at 640 by 480 resolution, so there was no need for them to be low res or medium res. But having a different monitor in there, or an upgraded monitor that's tri-sync, will go down to low res. You can get the benefit of running older arcade boards, like jammer boards, and also any of your retro stuff with the appropriate type of conversion boxes or interconnects. The whole of this subject is a lot more complicated. I've concentrated on Super Nintendo really for the purpose of this video, but the same kind of performance you can expect from any of those type of generation, so the real retro stuff, if you want to call it real retro stuff. So anything like your Sega Master System, your Mega Drive, your Super Nintendo, your Neo Geo, your PC Engine, your PlayStation 1, exactly the same. When you start to move to more recent consoles like your PlayStation 2 and your Xbox, it gets a bit more different. It's slightly different because those consoles actually natively had a higher resolution, and it's not as straightforward. You won't get the same picture quality. But saying that, with PlayStation 2 specifically, that did support low resolution games, but it was actually based on the games. So if the games were written in a low resolution video mode, you can get the same effect, but unfortunately a majority of the PlayStation 2 games were in high res, or they're actually in an interlaced mode, which I won't go into that in this video because again that's even more complication. So again, I've got to stress that what I'm really showing you here is examples of what the real low res type consoles could do, and the Sega Saturn would be involved in that as well. That would be included within that sort of list of low resolution consoles. Apart from actually showing you the devices that I've been using in the demo videos I've just given you, there's not a fat lot to say. What I may do is do another video and split it and do it on the Dreamcast, because the Dreamcast you can actually, there is a big difference between VGA and actually running out with an RGB SCART lead, because RGB will support low resolution with the VGA output and natively won't, because it should be at 640 by 480 resolution, which isn't low res. But there are some games for the Dreamcast that, believe it or not, actually look a lot better in low res on RGB SCART than they do in VGA, and some of those games don't even support VGA. Some of the fighting games, for instance, and the shooters. In fact, I can show you some of the recent shooters that have come out where they actually have the scan line. You can actually get scan lines out the Dreamcast, believe it or not, but you won't get that with VGA output. So it'll actually look better in low res. So I'll probably do a video of that next, because that's quite interesting as well. Right, just to finish this video off really, and as I sort of touched on the PlayStation 2 connection, I'm not going to go into much detail, but just to show you really what I was talking about before. I've got a PlayStation 2 Slim there. It's actually a UK version, but it's been modified, so it will run basically any game I want to throw at it, and it will give me exactly what output I need. So I've got Ridge Racer there, original Ridge Racer. That is actually one of the launch copies that I got when I got my first PlayStation 1, which has since gone to the graveyard. That broke after a couple of years of use. CD went on it, which is quite common. But anyway, this is modified, it's been chipped, so it will run anything. So obviously this is a Japanese version, and it's running on a UK console. Now I've got this set up and all wired in. Again, I'm not going to go too much into this stuff here, but if we look at the screen now, again, because this is a PlayStation 1 game, it is low res, so you can see on there, you probably can't have to wait until you can probably just make out the scan lines, probably just see them there. Just adjusted the camera slightly. Can't really see it too well, but believe me, the scan lines are just as obvious. I think it's this fast moving screen, it's hard to tell. In fact, if we come in there, It's not focusing great for some reason, but the scan lines are just as good, because the PlayStation 1 game is a low res game, because the PlayStation 1 was low res. The PlayStation 2 is also capable of displaying low res as long as the software tells it to. In this particular game, because it's a PlayStation 1 game, is actually telling the PlayStation to do that, so it's doing it, and the monitor is capable of displaying that screen, so it's fine. You can just make out the scan lines there, but like I said, actually looking at this, it's absolutely mint, it's crystal, it's clear, and it's as you'd expect a PlayStation 1 game to look like, even though it's being played on the PlayStation 2. And again, it is hard to see it, I've got to be honest. But it does look great, trust me. Now, something I wanted to get over to you as regards to a slight difference in things like the PlayStation 2 console and the Dreamcast, is that they are higher res. Now, you can't actually see very much on here, but you certainly can see that there doesn't appear to be much of scan lines, although you can see them intermittently. Now, the reason why that is because the signal is interlaced, and you get that slight flickering on a CRT tube, which is what you can see there. You can see it on the, hopefully you can see that come through. So this is obviously the startup screen to the PlayStation 2, and as I said, natively the PlayStation 2 is in a higher res, and you get this interlaced issue where it starts to flicker. Now obviously on a CRT it actually looks okay, it's not too bad, but you won't get the scan lines. So PS2 won't display scan lines in its normal native resolutions, because it is a high resolution. So that's one of the key differences between something like a PlayStation and certainly something like a Super Nintendo. You don't get this interlacing, you don't get this flashing, so it's a lot clearer in essence. But anyway, I just thought I'd just quickly show you that.